I never thought it would happen to me. My relationship with Evelyn was solid, or at least I thought it was. We'd been together for a few years and everything seemed perfect on the surface. We had our routines, our inside jokes, and an unspoken understanding of each other's lives. I loved him. He loved me. At least that's what I told myself every day. But there was something different about him lately. It was subtle at first, something I couldn't quite put my finger on, but it slowly began eating away at me. It started with little things: him being distracted, his phone buzzing constantly with messages he wouldn't show me. He was never the type to hide things, and yet, I began to notice him slipping away, both physically and emotionally. I remember how we'd be together and he would just zone out, his mind clearly elsewhere. When I tried to talk to him about it, he'd brush it off with a quick excuse or a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I wanted to believe him, to trust that it was nothing. I wanted to ignore the growing knot in my stomach every time he was glued to his phone or didn't seem to have time for me anymore. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Then there was Sophia, my best friend. She and I had been inseparable since high school, and I trusted her with every part of my heart. She was always there for me, the kind of person I'd call at any time of the day or night. I never imagined that she could ever do anything to hurt me, but as time went on, I began to notice things about her too. At first, it was small glances exchanged between her and Evelyn when they thought I wasn't looking, a lingering touch when she'd brush past him in the living room. It was subtle enough that I could have easily convinced myself I was reading too much into it. But then there was the tension between them, the way Evelyn would act when she knew I was looking, pretending like nothing was happening, but there was a nervous energy about him I couldn't ignore. Sophia, too, seemed to be avoiding my questions or shifting the conversation whenever it came to Evelyn. It was like there was this unspoken connection between them that I couldn't quite figure out, and I hated myself for thinking it, but the doubts were starting to creep in. Could there be something more between them? I tried to brush it off, tell myself I was being paranoid. They were my closest people. Evelyn was my partner, the person I thought I'd spend my life with. And Sophia, well, she was my best friend. She knew me better than anyone. It didn't make sense. I loved them both, and I trusted them. I convinced myself that I was overthinking it, that I had nothing to worry about. They were just being friendly, right? I tried to push the doubts to the back of my mind, telling myself that I had no reason to suspect anything. But as the days went by, the feeling lingered in the back of my head like a constant buzz I couldn't escape. What was happening? Was I just being insecure? Or was there something more? Every time I looked at Evelyn or Sophia, I found myself wondering if they were hiding something from me. And the worst part was, I didn't know if I was strong enough to face whatever the truth might be. So I kept pretending like everything was fine, hoping that the feeling would just go away. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. Something was wrong, and I couldn't ignore it forever. It all came crashing down one night. I had no idea that evening would change everything, but looking back, I should have known something was coming. The feeling in my stomach had been growing for days. It was as if my body already knew what was about to happen before my mind could catch up. I had been working late, staying longer at the office to finish some things up, trying to ignore the nagging thoughts that kept creeping into my head. I told myself I was just overthinking, but deep down I knew something wasn't right. I decided to come home early that night. I remember feeling a strange mix of anticipation and dread as I unlocked the door. It was quiet at first, too quiet. Usually Evelyn would be in the living room, sprawled out on the couch, watching some random show, or maybe cooking dinner, but tonight there was nothing. I stepped inside and noticed that the lights were dimmed in the hallway, and the soft sound of music was playing from the bedroom. It was strange, but I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe he was just unwinding after a long day. But then I heard laughter. It wasn't loud or forced, but soft, carefree, the kind of laugh you only hear when someone is completely at ease. I froze in place. It sounded familiar. I stood there for a moment, not sure if I was hearing things or if my mind was playing tricks on me. But the laughter was real, and it was coming from our bedroom. My heart started pounding in my chest. I didn't know why, but I felt an overwhelming sense of panic rise in me. My breath quickened, and before I even realized it, I was already walking toward the door to our room. I told myself to stop, to turn around and leave, but my body wasn't listening. My feet moved almost of their own accord, and before I could talk myself out of it, I was at the door. I paused for a second, the handle cold in my hand. I wanted to knock, to call out to Evelyn and ask what was going on. But I didn't. Something told me I already knew. I was too afraid of what I might see, but I couldn't walk away either. So I pushed the door open just enough to peek inside. And then everything came crashing down. There they were, Evelyn and Sophia, my best friend, in my bed, but not in a way I ever imagined. They were tangled together, completely naked, sharing moments of intimacy I couldn't wrap my mind around. My heart sank as I stood there frozen, unable to process what I was seeing. My stomach twisted in a way I didn't think was possible, and my thoughts were scrambled, too fast to catch. I couldn't breathe. My best friend, my partner. Together. In a way that felt like a direct betrayal of everything I thought we shared. I couldn't move. I couldn't say anything. I was trapped in that moment, staring at them, but unable to look away. It felt like time stood still, like the whole world was suspended around that image. I wanted to scream, to shout, to demand answers right then and there. But the words wouldn't come. All I could do was stand there, my heart shattering with every passing second. A part of me wanted to turn around, to walk away, and pretend I hadn't seen anything. Maybe I could just go back to the way things were, convince myself it was all a dream. But I couldn't. I couldn't unsee what was right in front of me. The reality of the situation hit me like a punch to the gut, and for the first time in a long while I felt truly helpless. My entire world, everything I thought I knew, had just been turned upside down. How could they do this? How could they betray me like this? The anger, the sadness, and the betrayal mixed into a toxic storm inside me. My body felt numb, like I was floating outside of myself. I didn't know what to do next. I was lost, I was broken, and there was nothing I could do to fix it. I don't know how long I stood there, but it felt like a lifetime. My mind was a blur, spinning in every direction. I couldn't move, couldn't think clearly. I was in shock, like I had been hit by a freight train. The image of Evelyn and Sophia together was burned into my mind, replaying over and over like a cruel loop. I wanted to scream, to shout at them, to demand answers, but I couldn't make a sound. My heart was pounding in my chest, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I felt like I was suffocating, but at the same time I couldn't tear myself away from the scene before me. Finally, my legs started moving, but it felt like they were carrying me in slow motion. I turned around and walked out of the room, feeling like I was moving through a dream. My body was on autopilot, my mind numb to everything around me. I stumbled out of the apartment, into the cold night air, trying to escape the suffocating feeling in my chest. I didn't know where I was going, didn't care. I just needed to get away from everything. From them. From the betrayal. I walked aimlessly through the streets, not paying attention to where my feet were taking me. My mind was racing, a million thoughts colliding at once. How could they do this to me? How could Evelyn, the person I trusted with everything, betray me like this? He had always been so sweet, so loving. Or at least that's what I thought. What had changed? Was it something I did? Was it something I didn't do? And Sophia. My best friend. The one person I had always counted on. The one person I thought would never hurt me. How could she? How could they both? The questions kept coming, each one more painful than the last. But there were no answers, no clear reason why they would do this. They had both known me better than anyone. I had shared my deepest secrets with them, trusted them with the things that no one else knew. And now they had done this. They had shattered everything I had believed in. I wanted to cry, to scream, to release all the anger and hurt that was swirling inside me. But I couldn't. I felt completely numb. I couldn't even process what had happened. It was like I was watching it all from a distance, disconnected from the reality of it. I couldn't stop seeing them in my mind, couldn't stop hearing that laughter echoing in my ears. It felt like I was losing control, like the world around me was spinning out of control, and I couldn't hold on to anything anymore. Eventually, I found myself at a park, sitting on a bench in the dark, staring out at the empty space in front of me. My hands were shaking, and I realized I had no idea what to do next. Should I go back home? Confront them? Ask them what the hell was going on? Part of me wanted answers, but the other part of me didn't know if I could handle the truth. I wasn't sure if I was strong enough to face what they had done. I thought about calling my mom or even one of my other friends, but I didn't know how to explain this. How could I tell anyone? How could I say the words out loud? I wasn't even sure what I was feeling anymore. I was angry, devastated, heartbroken. But at the same time, I felt a deep sense of confusion. What had gone wrong? Why had they betrayed me like this? I stayed there for hours, trapped in my thoughts, trying to make sense of everything, but I couldn't. The pain was too much. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All I could do was sit there, lost and broken, waiting for the moment when it would all make sense. But I knew deep down that it never would. The trust, the love I had for Evelyn and Sophia, it was gone, and I wasn't sure if I could ever get it back. The next day was a blur. I couldn't focus on anything. Work was impossible, and every little task seemed insurmountable. My mind kept drifting back to the scene one witnessed the night before, the image of Evelyn and Sophia together in my bed, and I couldn't escape it. I tried to shake it off, tried to convince myself that I was overreacting, that maybe there had been some kind of misunderstanding. But I knew deep down it wasn't a misunderstanding. What I had seen was real. They were together in a way they shouldn't have been, and there was no denying it. I knew I couldn't avoid them forever. I had to face them. I didn't know how to start the conversation, what I even wanted to say, but I couldn't keep running from it. I spent most of the day pacing, my anxiety building with each passing hour. I had to call Sophia first. She was the one who had always been there for me, the one I trusted more than anyone else in the world. And now, she was the one who had hurt me the most. How could I even begin to understand what had happened? How could I even look her in the eye and ask her why? I decided to call her. I needed to get this over with, to at least hear from her side, even if I didn't think I could ever trust her again. The phone rang in my ear and my heart pounded in my chest. I wasn't sure if I was ready for this, but I didn't have a choice. I had to do it. When she picked up, I didn't know what to say at first. I wanted to shout, to demand answers, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. The words didn't come out the way I expected. They were shaky, quiet, almost like I was still trying to process everything. I asked her what had happened, why she did it, why she had betrayed me like that. She tried to explain, but her words felt empty, like she was searching for a way to justify the unforgivable. She apologized over and over again, but the apology didn't change anything. It didn't take away the hurt, the brokenness that I felt inside. She told me she didn't mean for it to happen, that it just did. But that didn't make it okay. Nothing could make it okay. I asked her how long it had been going on, and the truth hit me like a slap to the face. It wasn't a one-time thing. It had been happening for months behind my back. She told me she didn't want to hurt me, that she was confused, that things just happened. But that didn't make any sense. How could she be confused about something so serious, something that could tear apart everything I thought I knew about our friendship? After what felt like an eternity, I ended the conversation. I couldn't listen to her anymore. There were no answers, no closure, just more pain, more betrayal. And I knew that nothing she said would ever change the fact that she had hurt me in a way I didn't think was possible. I hung up the phone and sat there staring at the screen, feeling hollow. It didn't feel real. I still couldn't understand it. I thought I knew her. I thought I knew Evelyn. But they had both shown me how wrong I was. The next step was Evelyn. I had been dreading this moment, but I knew it was inevitable. I had to talk to him, to hear his side of the story, even though I already knew the truth. I didn't want to hear his excuses, didn't want to hear him tell me it was a mistake, but I had to face him. I couldn't avoid it. When I saw him later that day, his face was filled with guilt, but I didn't know if that made it better or worse. He apologized, of course, telling me how sorry he was, how much he regretted what had happened. He said it was a mistake, that he never meant to hurt me. But those words, though they were full of regret, felt empty. How could he claim it was a mistake when it had been happening behind my back for so long? How could he act like this was just some small lapse in judgment when it had been a betrayal on the deepest level? The anger inside me was starting to boil over. I didn't know what I expected from this conversation. Maybe I wanted him to admit that he had ruined everything. Maybe I wanted him to say he was wrong, that he had chosen the wrong person. But I didn't get that. What I got was an apology that felt like it came too little, too late. The conversation didn't bring me the closure I thought it would. Instead, it just left me feeling more empty, more broken than before. I had loved him, trusted him, and now I had nothing. What hurt the most was that I had given him my heart, my loyalty, and he had thrown it all away. Nothing he said could change that. The truth was clear now. There was no going back from this. There was no fixing what had been broken. The trust, the love I had for them both, it was gone, and I wasn't sure if I could ever get it back. The days that followed were some of the hardest of my life. I tried to keep busy, tried to distract myself from the chaos in my mind, but it felt like everything I did only made the pain worse. Every time I looked around, I saw reminders of them, of the life I thought we shared, of the trust that had been shattered. I couldn't escape the feeling of betrayal, the weight of the truth pressing down on me every moment. It was hard to leave the apartment, even though I knew I had to. I couldn't stand the silence, the emptiness of being alone in a place that was supposed to feel like home. I had to get away, but where could I go? Everywhere I turned, I was faced with memories of Evelyn and Sophia. Our favorite restaurants, the places we used to go, even our friends, they all felt tainted now. I couldn't stand being around anyone who reminded me of them. It was like every person I saw was carrying a piece of the lie that had ruined everything. I kept asking myself if I was overreacting. Maybe this was just a phase, something that could be fixed with time. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. The damage had been done, and there was no going back. It wasn't just the fact that Evelyn had cheated on me, it was the fact that Sophia, my best friend, had been a part of it. She had known me longer than anyone else. She had seen me at my best and my worst. And yet, she had chosen to betray me in the worst way possible. The more I thought about it, the harder it was to breathe. It felt like my chest was being crushed under the weight of the lies they'd told. The hardest part wasn't just the cheating, it was the feeling of being completely blindsided. I never saw it coming. Evelyn had always been so loving, so attentive. Sophia had always been there for me, supporting me through everything. How could they both do this to me? How could they betray me when I had trusted them with everything? It took everything I had not to reach out to either of them again. I wanted answers. I wanted them to explain why, to tell me what had led to this. But every time I thought about it, the anger surged. I didn't want their excuses. I didn't want them to apologize and act like everything could just be fixed. It couldn't. Not after what they had done. The worst part was feeling like I had lost two people who meant everything to me. I couldn't trust anyone the way I used to. How could I? If Evelyn and Sophia, the people I had trusted the most, could do this to me, what was the point in trusting anyone else? It was hard to face the reality that the life I thought I had was a lie. I was left with nothing but broken pieces and shattered trust. I tried to keep moving forward, to find some sense of normalcy in a world that no longer made sense, but every step felt like a battle. I'd wake up every morning hoping the pain would fade, but it never did. It was always there, just beneath the surface, waiting to remind me of what I had lost. The days dragged on, each one feeling like an eternity. I wanted to move on, to let go of the anger and the hurt, but it was hard. How could I forgive them when everything inside me screamed that I was right to be angry? I didn't know how to heal. I didn't know how to forgive. All I knew was that I couldn't go back to the way things were. I had to let go. And as much as I hated it, I knew that meant leaving both of them behind. No amount of apologies or explanations could undo what they had done. And that was the hardest part, to accept that the people I had loved and trusted the most were no longer a part of my life. The trust, the bond we had, it was gone. And nothing would ever bring it back.